Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 7th of April of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to start with Artyomovsk. As you can see, the Russian sources map has been updated. Now the Russians are saying that as a result of clashes during the previous days, weeks and months, the Russians managed to establish final control over the central part, and there are just few islands in this area that still remains under Ukrainian controls. The Russians are saying that there are very heavy clashes in the vicinity of the prison that located in the central part of Bakhmut, and that there are very heavy clashes along the railroad ways in the vicinity of the bus station and the railroad station. But the Ukrainians took a decision to step back from the central part, and the Russians expect, and the Russian military experts expects that within the next few hours the Russians will be able to penetrate the railroad ways and to enter the western part of the Bakhmut through and bypass through the railroad station. Furthermore, if we take a look at this map, we see that this map has been updated also on the south and on the north of the western part of Bakhmut. The Russian sources are saying that as a result of clashes in the south area in the vicinity of the square of MiG-17 square, they managed to establish control over the residential area with the highest building inside of it. As you can see, from now on, Russian controls the highest point in this area, and from now on the Russian controls every single road and every single movement in the vicinity of these buildings. If we take a look at another Russian sources map, you see that they also confirm this information, that they establish control over this area and so on. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that as a result of clashes they managed to cross the Rose Square in this area and to enter another residential area with the high buildings that located on the south part of the Rose Square. So the Russians also developed their progress in this area, trying to push the Ukrainians as far as possible from the northern and from the south part in direction of the western fortification, this one. Now let's go to the western sources map and let's try to discuss and analyze the Ukrainian movements in this area. One more time, as a result of clashes during the previous hours and days, the Russians established control over this area, over this triangle along the Tchaikovskaya Street, and they control the buildings with the highest buildings in this area. And from this area, the Russians are able to establish visible and physical control over the supply roads and rotation roads that were passing by through this area. And as you can see, as a result of that, the Ukrainians were forced to reduce the width of their roads, of supply and support roads, and from now on the Russians from these big buildings are able to establish visual control over the roads that will go from Chasov Yar in direction of Bakhmut. Now they can see everything. This will increase the accuracy of Russian artillery system, and from now on I believe that Ukrainians has been trapped inside the western part because of the loss of this southern area. But to complete the story of Bakhmut and to establish the real cauldron, the Russians need somehow to find a solution how to establish control over Khromovo. From this moment, as soon as the Russians are able to get this town, the Ukrainians will be completely encircled and will appear and find themselves in cauldron. The Russian sources are saying that there are still 15,000 soldiers inside of this town. Furthermore, as you can see, because of the fact that Ukrainians were forced to step back from the central part, we understand that now the Ukrainians are overpopulated and over-concentrated in the western part. And to tell the truth, I'm not sure that there are a lot of places where the Ukrainians are able to hide, and there are not places for everybody to hide. And from this moment, they are a very nice and valid target for Russian artillery and the air forces. Furthermore, as we know, according to the other Russian sources map, when talking about the northern part of this western part of Artyomovsk, the Russians managed to penetrate this area and to develop another bridgehead in this area, and currently the situation is in this area is something like this. The Russians are pushing from the north, trying to move along the river and a lot along the water reservoir, and the main purpose of that attack is to secure the flanks and to cut the Ukrainians their visual control over the forest on let's say northwest part of the water reserve, let's say over the Khromovo part of this territory. And as soon as the Russians are able to do this, the Russians will be able to activate their movements in direction of Khromovo. For now they can do this because their flanks are not secured. Furthermore, we remember that the Russians were attacking during the previous days in direction of Bogdanovka, and in direction of Grigorievka. And some sources are saying that they got as close as possible to this area and established something like control and something like a small blockade of these towns. And these attacks were done with the same purpose, to secure the Russian flanks while attacking in direction of Khromovo. I expect that within the next few days the Russians will activate their movements in this area, and as soon as the Russians establish control over Khromovo, we can talk about the final encirclement and cauldron inside of Bakhmut, and 15,000 Ukrainian soldiers will be appeared in the cauldron. We'll see what are they going to be next. But anyway, the situation is very interesting. I supposed and I thought that Ukrainians would try to hold Artyomovsk at least until the Eastern, or even more until the victory day. But now I see that situation develops in Russian favor and everything is collapsing, and soon all the situation may turn into complete Russian favor. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of clashes on the Donetsk front line, the Ukrainians lost 270 soldiers, 16 armored vehicles, including 3 tanks, and 6 artillery systems of different types. Now we are going to the south, to Avdiivka area. There are also a lot of very interesting updates. The Russians continue their offensive operation in direction of Pervomaiska, in direction of Nitailov, in direction of Nivolskaya. Let's return back to the Western sources map. As you can see, this map is not updated. This map shows that there are some kind of salient in the vicinity of Vadiana, but the Russians established control over this area a long time ago, and now the Russians want to establish final control over this area, over this small town Pervomaisk, with one purpose: to push the Ukrainians from Nitailova and to take Nitailova under control as well. And the most important part is to cut supply and support of Nivolskaya and to get control over this area. This is a very important area, bridgehead, because the Ukrainians, using the bridgehead that located on the west from Krasnogorovka and Nivolskaya, they were using this bridgehead for artillery attacking of Donetsk, of artillery shelling of this town. As you know, during the previous 2 days, there were, as a result of Ukrainian artillery attack, around 12 civilians were killed. The casualties are very high in Donetsk, so it's like a vital question for the Russians to push the Ukrainians as far as possible from this area. So I'm not saying that the Russians have activated, like in the vicinity of Bakhmut, by doing something like a very massive storm attack, but the Russians are not sitting at the same place. They're trying to push and to push and to push, and today, as a result of those attacks they got some progress in this area. There are no changes in the south, Donetsk and Zaporozhye area. These 2 front lines are silent. As a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost around 20 soldiers and 40 soldiers and 3 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. When talking about Kherson, the situation is the same, just regular artillery duels without any changes on the ground. The Ukrainians lost 14 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. And when talking about Kupiansk and Liman frontline, the situation remains the same. The level of activities from the Russian side on Liman frontline is the lowest since the beginning, maybe of the special military operation, or since the beginning of appearing of this frontline. The Russians are saying that the total losses on both these front lines, Kupiansk and Liman, the Ukrainians lost just 80 soldiers, 5 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. Now let's move to the deployment map, and today this map was updated. As you know, recently some sources published very interesting documents. Some sources are saying that those documents are secret documents. I believe you saw all these documents, and a lot of people asking me my opinion, whether what do I think, whether these documents real or whether these documents are fake. It is very difficult to determine about the realness of these documents, because some information from these documents are very interesting and very looks like it's true, and some of the information from these documents I can't believe. For example, one of the interesting thing that I don't believe in is the total assessed losses that were published by this document. According to this document, the NATO specialist, because this document was prepared by the NATO officers, are saying that since the beginning of the special military operation till the 1st of March, the Russians lost just up to 17.5k soldiers, 17,000 soldiers. And these numbers are completely correlate and corresponds with the numbers that was provided by the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. And for example, with these numbers, I completely agree. The level of Russian losses is very low. But when talking about the loss from the Ukrainian side, this document says that Ukrainians lost up to 71,000 soldiers. And from this perspective, this losses is very low, and not just because they're very low and something like this, because during the previous months we received a lot of information from other sources like Ursula von der Leyen and other military experts and other military representatives of NATO. Some of them were saying that Ukraine lost more than 400,000 soldiers. Some of them were saying that Ukrainians lost more than 100,000 soldiers, and so on. And from this perspective, these losses is very low. So maybe this number shows that this is not a real document. But from the other side, there are very interesting in part of this document related to the brigades that currently have already been deployed on the territory of Ukraine, but since March till the end of April, till the beginning of April, they were located in Europe and the Western countries, and they were under training process. As you can see, there are a lot of very interesting information about the training progress, about the equipment progress, and as you can see at the beginning of March, just few brigades was like under training process, like this 48th and 47th brigade passed more than 40% of training, and the rest of them was below zero, but something around zero. But you need to understand that I analyzed this paper, and as a result of that I find out that this document has more than 24 pages, and we saw there was published just 5 pages of this document. So it's very difficult to determine, and we can just compare the situation, the information that we receive from this document with the real information and information that we discussed during the previous videos and so on. But there is a very interesting updates about the brigades, about the number of forces, about the types of weapon and so on. And today, for example, these days recently the deployment map has been updated. Now from now on we can see at least 3/5 of new brigades that currently were deployed in Ukraine. The first fifth is located in the south in the vicinity of Odessa. There is a 22nd mechanized brigade, there is a 41st mechanized brigade, and there is a 21st mechanized brigade. The next fifth is located in the vicinity between Kryvyi Rog and Dnipro. There is a 31st Mechanized Brigade, 32nd, 117th, 118th, and there is a 182nd Air Assault Brigade. And the third fifth is located on the north of Dnipro, and I'm talking about 33rd Brigade, 160th, 88th Mechanized Brigade, and of course 30th Jagger Brigade. So we see that there are 3 fifths that Ukrainians managed to prepare, and all of them are located very close to the Zaporozhye and Kherson district. Maybe these three one that located in the south, the Ukrainians will try to use to cross the Dnipro River and to start offensive operation from Kherson district. These 2 brigades that located near Zaporozhye and near Dnipro will be used to attack the Russians exactly in direction of Zaporozhye area. And these brigades are located, we can find in this list as well. So based on that, we can see that even if there is some kind of like fake information, we see that some part of this information completely correlate with the information on the ground, because the newly brigades are persisting here and we can find them on the map. Very interesting part of all these documents I found on this map. This is the map. This map was prepared by the NATO officers. This map has the title "Freeze Favorable to Vehicle Maneuver." So as you can see, there are 3 lines, and these 3 lines correlates with the situation with the ground. As you can see on the bottom, there is something like timeline, and this title of this timeline is Mud Frozen Ground Timeline. And there are months like February, March, April, May, and June. And as you can see, and on the left there are three colors: the green, orange, and blue. And these three colors colorate with the lines on the map: green, orange or yellow, and blue one. And as you can see, there is a timeline, and there is like different color squares. For example, yellow square means that the ground is partially frozen. So that in February, in the beginning of February, let's say along the blue line and along the yellow line, in the beginning of February, the ground in this area is partially frozen. From the middle of February till the beginning of March, all over these three lines, the ground is frozen. So as you can see, then starting from the beginning of March till, let's say, the middle part of March, or till the end of March, the ground is partially frozen. And for example, when talking about the blue line, and this blue line goes this line is on the south near Zaporozhye, we see that after the middle part of March, there is a mood in this area. So that's why, and this part of timeline is colored in red, so like alert flag not to do anything during this period of time. And this very interesting map, because as you can see, starting, let's say, from March till the end, or till the middle part of May, at least when talking about the green line, they're going to be a mood all over the entire Ukraine. And there is only one area, let's say the blue line, this one, the south one, when and the last square is the green one, saying that from now on you can do everything you want, and it's like very nice time for vehicle maneuvers. So as you can see, just at the beginning of the May, the Ukrainians, according to this classification, are able to start their offensive operation along the blue line, just in the beginning of May, not even in April. And this is very interesting, and it's very difficult to determine, is it a fake information or it's a real information, because as you know, we are talking about the upcoming Ukraine offensive operation currently today, and they're not starting this operation. And maybe this map was done, and the main goal of this map to force the Russians think that Ukrainians are going to start this attack in May, but not in April, as they are going to do according to many military authorities, officers, and so on. So if you ask me, I believe that we can't believe this map, these documents from the other side. We can't not believe them. The only thing we can do is to take as much as possible information to compare with data we have and to make conclusions. And I believe that a lot of people have already made a lot of conclusions based on these maps, because they have a very interesting piece and portions of information. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon. Have a good day. Bye bye.